Hello everyone, this is Darren from EnglishTuition.org. Welcome to another video. Now in today's video I want to talk about the principles behind my teaching methodology. Now I previously posted a video on how I teach during my lessons so that parents have a clearer idea of what they have signed up their kid for, right, when they register for lessons. So I thought I would do a follow-up video to kind of clarify some of the principles behind the things that I'm doing during the lesson. Now let's talk about the very first principle, okay, which I've considered, which is rote learning. Rote learning refers to the memorization of certain words, phrases, or text. Now in the past, when we were being educated, so to speak, and while we were learning languages, we have such a thing as a dictation. Dictation is when students are made to memorize entire paragraphs or passages or even the entire compositions, and then we spell out the text word for word while the teacher is reading out the text passage. So that's dictation. So after some time, some people realize that this method of teaching is puts a lot of stress on the children, and we are teaching them to be parrots, and they are merely regurgitating the text from what they have learned instead of trying to understand, right, what is the intention behind using some of those texts. So now those learning methods are considered obsolete. Nobody uses them anymore. So do I still use that in my teaching? The answer is yes, but only to a very small extent. For example, new students who just sign up, they are expected to go through a series of spelling, because in order to be able to use language effectively, you have to, at the very least, be able to spell words correctly. So if you can't spell well, then you can't write at all. Now, if you are talking about the PSLE, the editing component has got spelling questions where students need to identify whether it's a spelling or a grammar mistake, and if it's a spelling mistake, then they will be required to come up with the correct spelling. Apart from that, there's writing, right? In terms of continuous writing, you see parents standing their children for creative writing classes. If they can't spell the words, then it doesn't matter what story writing skills that they manage to pick up, right? Because they can't use the words in their writing. But I pretty much stopped at just picking up words, knowing how to spell them, and as well as some very good phrases. I think it is very useful for students to pick up some of the better phrases that they can use in their writing, but ultimately it's just for them to use these phrases, okay, as a tool to express the ideas that they have. So on the one hand, we are able to keep the originality of their ideas, and on the other hand, we are trying to improve on the language. So it's a win-win situation. Now the second principle is that I am more results driven. Now, I'm not saying that intangible benefits are not important, right? So sometimes when we send students, to attend certain lessons, they may be creative writing lessons, they may be story-based lessons. They are not so much focused on the syllabus. Are there intangible benefits? I believe there is, right? Students may develop more interest in the subject as a result of those stories or as a result of those particular play-based activities that they go through, and the intangible benefit is that they may find that they enjoy reading a little bit more, and that in turn help them to improve on their language. But for me, a lot of students, when they sign up for lessons, they are kind of in survival mode, right? They some of them are like barely passing the exams, and some may even be failing the exams. For those students, what they are primarily concerned with is being able to pass the exams, or at least be able to bump up their grades at least by a couple of levels. And in order for me to do that, I have to focus more on the syllabus. That's why we have the the syllabus driven lessons where I go through topic by topic and make sure that they understand each and every topic. I also spend a lot of time to identify areas for improvement. So this may take a little bit of time, and is typically achieved through the use of custom worksheets as well as assessment books. So as they go through the exercises, I try my best to kind of spot patterns, as to know which particular areas, what are some of the bad habits that this student has formed, and do we need to do something about it. So that is always on an ongoing basis. The fourth principle that I abide to is the use of language. In other words, the application of the language. So during the lessons, I always encourage the students to use the language more. And some students ask me, how do I improve on my oral? Now, I always tell them that when I try to engage you in the conversation, and you're trying to search for words in your head, you're trying to develop your oral skills, that is in a way developing the oral skills, right? We don't have to formalize the development of language. So language itself can be used on a daily basis, and we try as much as possible to create these opportunities during the lessons for the students to interact with me, or maybe even among the students themselves, right, in order for them to improve their language. Now, the fifth principle that I tend to follow is thorough checking. Now, I find that many teachers or tutors, sometimes when they were in the process of conducting the teaching, maybe due to time constraints, or maybe due to the group size, they are unable to do a very thorough job of checking on the work of the students. So for me, I think this is a very big part, because no point for me to teach and teach and teach and teach, but at the end of the day, the child is not digesting, or the child is not absorbing the knowledge. All right, so I make it a point to try to check whenever possible through my marking. All right, and then students are required to do corrections, and I try to explain to them their mistakes. So granted, this is harder to achieve in bigger groups, but typically, as I'm making this video, my groups are relatively small, so between 1 to 3 students. So I'm still able to do that, to a large extent. The sixth principle that I follow is the principle of persuasion. Now, if you have watched some of my previous videos, I mentioned that I operate on the principle of mutual respect. So I think there's some overlapping here. I spend a lot of time trying to explain why certain actions are taken, why certain methods are used, why do I give homework, because I believe students they take the work better, in good spirits, if they are able to understand the rationale behind some of our actions. So I don't believe in just going and scold the child, and then put the child down, and then hoping that one day they will improve. I believe sometimes that can be counterproductive. Of course, having said that, sometimes kids being kids, they are naughty. They may not be able to understand the reasoning as to why we are doing something yet. So in those cases, I'm just strict with them. All right. And the seventh principle is kind of what I've been doing a little bit more, in recent months. Is that I try to do more teaching through storytelling, because I realized that when I tell stories based on real life experiences, it actually enhances the lessons, right? So the lessons become more interesting. Students can learn about values. So for example, they can learn about discipline, right, which is a very big part of learning, right? Without discipline, we cannot achieve anything. So I tell them real life stories on as examples, right, of discipline, and then I let the students decide for themselves, right, whether they want to become a more disciplined student themselves. And then the last principle here, and the last principle that I want to mention here is the principle of repetition. Now, this has a lot to do with learning. I'm sure you've heard of the saying that repetition is the mother of all learning. I believe it's the mother and father of all learning, right? Because sometimes being exposed to a certain topic just once or twice may not be enough. So students tend to improve more through repeated practice. So this is very similar to how any professional would perfect his or her skill, and that is through repeated practice. We practice again and again until the work or the exercise becomes second nature, and then that's when learning becomes less stressful, and we are able to enjoy the learning a little bit more, and then we are able to move on, right, even to more advanced techniques. So yeah, that's all I have to say in this video. I hope I have not bored you to death. And if you would like to see future videos just like this one, please subscribe to my YouTube channel or follow me on my Facebook page. I'll leave the links in the video description below. I'll talk to you soon in the next video. Bye.